know everyone. I'm sure it's a great reunion as well. So thank you for all making such a big effort. And thank you to Libra and Elaine for helping to run it. Without you, we wouldn't have had it at all. So the story of Doyle Jennings is one that I'm sure Libra and Elaine remember very well. He was one of my first patients that I cared for. And he was very complicated. And he had a terrible situation and one that was overwhelming. I wasn't sure how to solve the problem, and we had to think outside the box. And we went to extreme effort to solve the problems. After we took him through the whole gauntlet of years of reconstructive surgery, he chose a pathway that I didn't expect, and you have to read the book to find out what happened. But I felt like it was a good lesson for me as a provider to try to figure out, was I doing what I was taught to do, or was I doing what I thought a surgeon would do, which is just to fix things and keep fixing them, or was I doing what he really needed? And I learned my greatest lesson with that case, because he was probably what I would call my worst outcome. Sometimes death is not the worst outcome. So that's why I told his story first. And he's the one that sort of taught us that we needed the support group, because we all needed therapy after we were done taking care of him.
And why do you think the support group worked? And why do we not see more of these happening in medicine?
Oh, well, I think it did work. I mean, this room shows you that it did. We're all here. I think one of the things that I noticed is Dr. Gobriel, who was one of our transplant surgeons, came up to me and he said, "You're always in a good mood and you're always so happy." And I don't think he realized that it was because of Elaine and Libra that I was always in a good mood, but it was also because of being tethered to my patients in a very special way and having that connection to what was going on in their lives and understanding the impact of what I did as a surgeon, and then being able to longitudinally follow them throughout their lives and my career and see. For instance, one of the patients in here had a terrible complication the month after I went to Mayo Clinic, and they cared for him, and I continued to follow what happened with him even after I left. Knowing that what happened to him was a terrible complication made me literally change the way I do my surgery. I do jejunostomy tubes a completely different way now because of the way that his bowel got flipped around the anchoring site. And so I think we're better surgeons. I think we're better doctors. I think we're better people if we have a tight connection with our patients, and the support group was the best way to do that.
Right. And recently, and I'm in the IT space, there's a push for this AI technology for smart processes. Doctors are more stuck to screens, and they're pushed to serve more patients. How do you see this trend? Is it helpful or helping with burnout?
So I think all of the AI technology and all of the automation in medicine and facing a screen during the interview when you're talking with your patient are all worrisome trends. Obviously the technology helps us to be more accurate and consistent and deliver better care, but I think being closely personally tied to your patient anchors you on what's important, and being able to follow your patients and see them and know what happens to them over time is important. The depersonalization of medicine and the shift work and the way that we are looking at a computer instead of into the eyes of our patient, then we get lost in what do they want, or what do they care about, or we aren't telling them about all the complications, or we aren't really learning what we need to know to take care of them. So I think it's sort of a push and a pull as far as the technology. I do think that the more we get pulled away from our patients, the more depressed physicians get. I think that's why we're seeing more burnout, because physicians are spending more time away from patients rather than with patients. So if the technology, for instance, Microsoft just came out with a system called DAX Express, where you can sit and look into the eyes of your patient and talk to your patient, and it records everything and writes your note for you. So that's enabling technology, and I'm not supported by Microsoft, so I don't have anything to disclose, but it's so expensive. So we need technology that we can afford that helps us to connect with our patients and document at the same time. So that's one of those connections where I think it's actually helping.
talk to me a little bit about your medical training and where do you think it falls short?
So I tell everybody that I think when you go to medical school and you get your MD degree and you learn about being a doctor, it teaches you how to care for an individual person. One of the things that I did in my journey, thanks to Matt Blackman, my husband sitting in the back, he supported me through all of my training. I got a master's degree in public health. And people who go and get a master's degree in public health learn how to care for groups of people or care for a whole population as opposed to just an individual. And I think that's what made me a better doctor, and that's what allowed me to think about the support group, because I was formally trained to run focus groups and support groups through that training. So I think just being a medical doctor is great, but I think there's a lot that we need to learn as physicians that makes us better doctors besides what we get taught in medical school.
And what was it that gave you the idea to celebrate when patients lived 5 years past their diagnosis?
I think that was your idea. I think it was actually Elaine's idea. We had some of our patients, I think it was Polly Campbell and Stephen Smith, who lived to 5 years through the support group, coming continuously. And we got to that point where it was such a big deal that people lived 5 years. I mean, these are the two deadliest cancers. Lung cancer and esophageal cancer are the two deadliest cancers that we fight. And I don't know, Michael, how far out are you? You're
since 2009.
Ooh, wow.
Nice.
Yeah. You were 23? Yeah.
Yeah, around that 25.
Yeah.
23.
Were you 25?
I
Yeah.
think so.
Okay, I'm gonna have to fix that in the book. I think I said you were
Oh,
25. But it's just amazing. I mean, I think if you think about somebody's journey and you think about the chances of making to that 5-year mark, it seemed like such a miracle when we finally got people there. It was just definitely something worth celebrating. So we would have a huge party and everybody would sign the photograph around everybody's celebration, and it was a very special moment, and it kind of gave people something to look forward to. But we really celebrated. We pretty much celebrate anything.
And as a researcher, how do you always know that we're going to go with your idea? You have this digital app. How did you come up with those questions?
Yeah, you never really know where, you can't connect all the dots, or you don't know where your research journey is going. You sort of follow your intuition. So when we started out, we were just trying to solve a clinical need because we couldn't get everybody the follow-up that we needed. So we thought if we put them all in the same room, that would be the best way to do it. But then Elaine started noticing that there were trends in the answers that people were giving, and we started writing down all the symptoms, and then we started making up a questionnaire to evaluate and measure the symptoms. And then when I went to Mayo Clinic, we started figuring out ways to create a category for whether the symptoms were good, moderate, or severe, and then that turned into a digital app. So it was sort of an evolutionary an iterative process.
Oh, great. Have you written any other books? Or is this?
Yeah, I've written 3 or 4 other books, but they're not ready for publication. This one actually was not supposed to be published, really. I just sort of kept a journal of everything that had happened, and Elaine and I would write notes and keep track of everything and the stories. And it was actually Eileen Bice who had written the book and had wanted to get it published, and we really were so excited about that. And then after some time went by, we were having dinner with some friends, and one of our friends turned it into Mayo Clinic Press without telling me. And they liked the idea. So we ended up getting it published.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's shift about a little bit away from the book and talk about your new role in Houston.
Yeah, so actually Peter and I learned that we're going to be working together. So
there you go.
both at Baylor.
Yeah.
So I'll be coming to Baylor College of Medicine and leading a lung institute. And I'll be the Olga Keith-Weiss Professor of Surgery. So we're back in Houston. We're so happy about it. I'm glad to hope we get to see all of you a lot.
I'm in IT, so I'll be trying to help her with her
Yeah, I
things.
appreciate it. Well, 30% of my job at Mayo was in digital health. So
Right, yeah.
I had a a lot to do with the IT and digital people. They were every Friday. I spent the whole day with them.
Right. Yeah, we need friendlies like Dr. Blackman for testing, and it's hard as an IT professional to get them to test because they're under so much pressure. They don't have time to
Yeah,
do
you've
these
gotta.
activities.
She was a very willing participant, though.
All right.
Your interviews were always the best.
Right. So today, medicine is practiced in silos. Individual hospitals compete with one another. Practices rarely communicate. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you see integrated care helping patients in the future? What are some of the keys for this to make happen?
I think right now as physicians, we've got Mara Antonoff, who's a great esophageal surgeon and lung surgeon from MD Anderson. We do have a lot of silos. We have different groups, and as a patient journeys through that system, take the Texas Medical Center. My daughter, Grace, was born at Methodist. Her brothers were born at Texas Children's and St. Luke's. And then we have, if somebody in our family gets cancer, you might go to a different hospital. I got most of my health care at Houston Methodist, and I'll probably now be getting it at Baylor. And it's so disparate. As a patient going from one system to the other system, we need digital integration to help patients. And so I would advocate that someplace like the Texas Medical Center or some other group work together to digitally integrate that seamless, personal, careful experience. Patients just can't keep track with 50 apps on their phone to try to figure out what's going on. I also think we need whole organ approaches. I think when you get sick with lung disease as a child, you need a group that cares for you throughout your whole care process, not going to one hospital and then switching to another hospital and then switching to another. We should be coming together as healthcare professionals and organ specific and organ dedicated, which is why I'm so excited about the Lung Institute.
Right. How about any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
I'm a physician myself, but I have wanted to start a support group, but I was wondering how you dealt with like institutional barriers. Maybe that's not what the book's about so much, but
No.
kind of like how did you get it started? How did you get buy-in? I know money kind of is a big part a lot of the higher ups care about.
Yeah, I don't think anybody in the Department of Surgery had ever done a support group before. Elaine was able to argue to get us free parking, which was really helpful.
Yeah, it was.
And Elaine was able to get us a conference room, which they would leave open on Tuesday, the first Tuesday of every month. And so Elaine really, if you have an Elaine, it all comes together. So it's really important to get institutional buy-in. We just started a support group, and actually Dr. Antonoff is the incoming president of Women in Thoracic Surgery, and we started a support group for women in cardiothoracic surgery. When I was coming out in practice and running the support group, we were less than 3% of the specialty, and so you never had a line at the bathroom, but other than that, it was really the only perk of being a woman. And so we recognize that a lot of women in our specialty need to be recruited, but they also need support. So to start it, I think you just start with a small group, and you can have it by Zoom, and it's free, or you can have it in person, or you can have it on like Facebook. There are a lot of different ways to connect with groups and give them support. But I think it's important that a physician moderate. One of the things that we learned is if there's not a physician present and the patients are all gathering, they could be passing a lot of urban legend around, and you don't really know. Like Stephen Smith occasionally would be passing around some interesting information to the patients in the support group. He was, well, I won't say, but you have to read the book. There are parts of the book that got edited out that I might tell you in private.
Okay, good.
So, I'm involved in something called Ignite, and it's healthcare through the lens of a woman. Talk to us a little bit about just how differently, and she happened to have been my mother's lung surgeon, so we also were in high school together, and we came from a high school that really valued women and kind of threw us out there to do wonderful, bold things.
Yeah.
But now we're in healthcare, and when we look at VC for a woman-owned healthcare business, leadership in the C-suites, the numbers are beyond minuscule.
Yeah.
What's it been like as a woman in that space?
Ooh, that's a spicy question. I don't think I can give a complete answer to that because it might get too spicy, but it's tough. My first day when I was at my last job, we were in the operating room and we were doing a case, and I asked for an instrument. And you'd think that would just be a regular thing that you would do. And I got pulled in for coaching because they said that I asked for the instrument in an intimidating way.
Oh.
And I was the first woman in cardiothoracic surgery on staff ever in the 150 years of the organization. And I guess just asking for an instrument is a really intimidating thing if it's coming from a woman.
Wow.
So I started saying please every time I would do a case. May I please have the scalpel? May I please have, and that's a totally different book.
But that's extra time that you don't need to.
Yeah,
You're working
it's you lose efficiency, and
Yes.
over time, eventually, what happens is the teams learn to get to know you, and eventually they're requesting to come into your room because they want to work with you, because they see that you're more likely to have their back, you're more likely to be easier to work with, or more compassionate, or have a reasonable conversation in between the cases, or they're advocate. But it is really tough. There's some scenarios where we do not get equal treatment. Dr. Antonoff has actually done some research in this area and published a lot on that, and I think it's really amazing to see what happens when a woman comes into what's predominantly a man's world, and the way that she gets treated, and the way that she's either listened to or not listened to or interpreted. And I have two quotes that I think are really important. Anybody who ignores more than 50% of the talent pool is doomed to fail. And that's Dr. Vaporsian used to always say that for us, and he trained me and trained Mara. The other quote is, women need to be in the room where all the decisions are being made. And I think her portrait is up there. That's RBG. So I think it's important. I think it matters, and I think we need to figure out a way to make it happen. I don't think we need to fill a quota and be put on a board because we're a woman. I think we need to be given the same opportunity, and we need to be given the same, oh my gosh. Hi. So I think it's really important that we, as a community of women, support one another.
And men supporting women as well.
And men supporting women, and
Finding
women
it's
supporting
critical.
men. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we just need to all be kind and support one another. There doesn't need to be a hidden agenda.
Dr. Blackman, tell them about your pearls.
So I started out wearing pearls in the operating room when I was a resident, and I wore them all the time to try to remind the men in the room that I was a woman, because when you're scrubbed, you look kind of like a man. You're in a man scrub hat and man scrubs, and you got the gown on, and the pearls make it really obvious that there's somebody besides a man operating. And so that was why I did it in the beginning. Nancy Perrier is a head and neck surgeon who is amazing. I think a lot of people in this room already know that. And she wrote an article about maintaining who you are and your sense of self while you go through this really rigorous training, and trying to not let it define you, and letting you create who you are as you go into this really grueling specialty. And one of the things that it became is when bad things happened, I learned that pearls are made from grit. And that grit is what gives you depth of character. And that you can't control the things that happen, but you can control your response to it. And so that's actually what makes the pearl. So that's why I wear them.
One more?
I have a question too.
Yes.
I will say one thing about the pearls. Maybe you all heard it, I didn't until I was in the hospital, and I'm begging for ice chips, which of course they wouldn't give me. And their answer was, the pit bull with pearls says no. That was, so I think the nursing staff got it.
Maybe it was to soften things up a bit. Love that story.
In your book, you talk a lot about not enough hours in the day, work-life balance. How did, I guess, your husband, your little children, how did they deal with you spending so much time in the hospital with your patients and just trying to balance it all and being a mother and, you know?
Is Grace back there? Hi, do you want to talk about that? Am I around, or do you feel like I balance work and life well?
When you're at work, I just tell myself that you're like saving people's lives. So that kind of helps it.
Nice. This is Grace. So everybody in the support group gave me a baby shower right before we left, and Grace was just almost born when we did that. And so Grace, a lot of these people really thought a lot about you and didn't get to meet you, but now you're here, so it's great.
Sweet girl.
I have a question,
Yeah.
and it's a little less spicy, but yeah. You say you want to have doctors be more with patients, look them in the eyes, away from computers. Part of that also, the patients have different beliefs, and I don't know if you've heard Pop Ministry. It's an organization that sends chaplains to
Prayers of the people.
Prayers of the people. Do you see that as well? Do you try to meet that need of patients? It seems like it helps them to heal better. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and I have a whole book chapter dedicated to that because Beverly, actually, we used to go to church together, and Beverly met Polly in church and would bring
Believe that
her
one or
to
not.
the support.
Those that know Polly believe that or not. Where did you meet her? At church.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the support group might have questioned.
Yes. Yes.
But I think no matter what your faith is, and no matter what you believe, it's an important part of healing and recovery and struggling and fighting cancer. And so I do think it plays a very important role. And Maureen used to teach in a Jewish school. And when Yoav Kaufman was my resident rotating on plastic surgery, he came in. I used to mandate that's the pitfall part. I used to mandate that all of the residents would come to the support group because in surgery there's a lot more to learn than just being a surgeon. You need to learn what's happening to these people longitudinally. And so Yoav came into the support group and he saw Maureen, and I think you were so proud that one of your students had become a surgeon. So yeah, I think all of those bonds are stronger than just regular friendships, and they're important. And most institutions that are faith-based, the predominant thing that's focused on is caring for others and helping, and we all know that we're either going to need a caregiver or be a caregiver, or sometimes both. And so I do think it's important.
Yeah, great.
So we probably have time for 2 more questions.
Okay.
All right, well, let's have Beverly.
Yeah,
come
why
up.
don't we let Beverly, and I won't read it. You guys know, you've been listening to me all night.
Now, why she didn't change all these years, I don't know. But
Here, have a seat.
Oh, good. Thank you. You guys are. All right. Actually, I'm going to take my glasses off because I can see better. An actress, when she was younger, oh, I look so better with my glasses. Polly had been a nanny for a friend of mine who had previously lived on our street in Houston. When the family moved away, Polly would have been alone if not for the warm and supportive community of the church. Beverly and Polly were stalwarts, the First Presbyterian, friends with a common purpose. They knew and respected each other, and yet the depth of their bond did not truly develop until one needed the other. Before that, it was more cordial, superficial, and polite. It wasn't until Polly became ill and Beverly escorted her to appointments and to the support group that they learned to be unguarded with one another. Was Polly ever really unguarded? I don't know.
She came out unguarded.
She did. Yes, she did. Being unguarded, that is what I call being comfortable, to be weird, yourself, and real. You can recognize it when you see it. No one is trying to impress anyone else. Trust is present and unconditional. Love is there to stay. During the time I ran the support group, I can barely remember ever having a single meeting without Beverly and Polly being present, until Polly's condition deteriorated and she died. I truly believe the support she received from Beverly helped her make it to the point where she was cured from the esophageal cancer. With Beverly's help, Polly did not only survive surgery, but thrived. It wasn't always easy. Polly, that's an understatement. Polly was bitter at times. She was angry at her cancer. A lifetime of smoking led to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and had left her bound to a large oxygen tank, and she missed the spontaneous person she used to be. Polly hated living in an assisted living facility so far away from the rest of the world, and she missed the old friends who had died years before her. Still, she was truly grateful for the selfless care and love shown to her by Beverly. Most of the time, Beverly sat behind Polly at the support group, remaining quiet. However, there were times when Beverly would encourage Polly to become more vulnerable or to be more or less vocal as the situation required. When Polly would roll her eyes, oh, she rolled her eyes, at a comment made by one of the newer survivors who was still learning how to describe their symptoms, Beverly would place her hand on Polly's shoulder and whisper something wise, calm her down, or ask her to explain to the group why she was so grumpy. Perhaps Polly was acting out because of the loss of another friend. Perhaps the topic of children had come up in the group and she was regretting the fact that she never had children. But it was Beverly who always got Polly to soften up and open up. Beverly also knew how important the support group meetings were to Polly and would have made sure she was there even if she had to bring her on a stretcher. She made that a point. Over the years, Beverly and Polly became more than caregiver and patient. They became best friends. Beverly brought Polly to my daughter's dedication. Where did she go?
Great.
When she was born, looking like great aunties, they rushed across the vestibule to greet the small child in my arms. And for 9 months, they had watched her grow in my belly during support group. Polly acted like Grace was her own grandchild. She sure did. She sure did. The way she touched Grace was that this child was the most precious thing in the world, which to me she was. And I have a cherished photo from that day. And whenever I'm sad or feeling overwhelmed by the weight of my job, I turn to that moment and remember the good. That's my contact picture for y'all, by the way. Polly died 4 months after that, and Beverly spoke at her funeral. She talked about Polly's grace and humor and about her sometimes crusty, is that the word you use? Crusty disposition. That was sweet. She spoke with honesty and love. Polly may have cursed like a sailor, and she did, which is why when people ask, where did you meet her? Church? Oh, okay. But her faith was deep, and she loved God and was happy to tell anyone about it. She was. Thank you.
Thank you for reading
Well, thanks. How can we get the book?
Well, it's on Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's easy. And Dreamscape did the audiobook, and it's you can listen to it on Audible.
Awesome.
And I had to audition to narrate my own book, and I got it. I got the job. Yeah, so you can if you want to. My husband is he's already heard my voice enough, but we're gonna try to listen to it on our drive to Florida.
Wow. Well, thank you, Dr. Blackman.
Thank you.
I understand there's a lot of people here that haven't seen each other in a while, so mingle and get to talk with each other. Thank you all for coming.
You only wanted to